Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm not here with Geeky Sparkles. I'm going to talk about comic books. I don't think she really cares about the comic book industry. I don't think anybody really cares about the comic book industry, but you're not allowed to say that, because if you say that, you're supposed to just end your channel. You're supposed to just quit YouTube if you say anything negative about the modern comic book industry, right? That's how that works. So I'm going to say a couple of negative things about the modern comic book industry, because things are not great right now. Let's be honest. Even though some of the books that are coming out are pretty good, there actually are some good comics out there, but having good books, having quality books, is not the same as having a sustainable, viable, healthy industry. And right now, everything is in turmoil. Lots of publishers, lots of comic shops, I guess, are owed money because of the Diamond bankruptcy. Everything's kind of just like burning down. And Dynamite Entertainment itself is owed $500,000 from Diamond. So for those of you who don't know, who are like, yeah, I don't really care about the nuts and bolts of the comic book industry, but one, why you're watching this video, but two, Diamond comic distribution was the biggest, only game in town for the longest time in comics, and they supplied most shops with their merchandise. And this was for years. They pretty much pushed everybody else out years ago. It was a whole thing. But since the 90s, they were pretty much the only game in town through the pandemic, when Steve Geppi, who was the owner, decided he was going to effectively shut down the comic book industry because he wanted to, I guess. And that was a huge mistake on his part, because then competition popped up, and Marvel and DC and Image and some of the other big publishers jumped ship to Lunar and Penguin Random House and whatever. But a lot of comic shops are just used to ordering from Diamond and just Diamond. And this whole thing is a huge mess. A lot of publishers owed substantial amounts of money from Diamond. And since they're in bankruptcy court, good luck collecting that, right? Because how that works is when you file for Chapter 11, pretty much you pay your debtors in the order, I guess, that the judge says you owe them money. And usually, if they owe taxes or whatever, that stuff all comes first. And you basically get in line, and you hope for the best. You hope by the end of it that there's something for you. Sometimes people, as I understand it, like, after the bankruptcy thing, like, they don't get paid at all. Because or if they get paid very, very little. They have to sell their debt. They might be owed $10,000 and they might get $10 out of it, because that's all that the person has to pay them. And it's a mess. It's thrown a huge wrench into the industry right now. It's very interesting, though, to see Comics Beat, which is Heidi McDonald, who, I, as far as I can tell, she denied that there were problems for years, right? And that we were all headed for this iceberg. Well, now that it's here, they're doing the journalism over there. They're just kind of like, yeah, things are really bad. And we have Tilting at Windmills, which is Brian Hibbs, who's a retailer. People have opinions about Brian Hibbs. I don't know him personally, but I know people who do know him. But he's basically like, yeah, comic shops aren't equipped to order outside of Diamond. A lot of these people don't even know how to order outside of Diamond. And he's actually going to, now, to his credit, he said he's going to try to pivot his column into telling comic shop retailers how to order from other places, because everybody's so dependent on Diamond. I don't know how that's going to go. I'm going to be completely honest. And I mean, there's no good way to spin this, right? I mean, you can try to be, I guess you can be Pollyanna about it and be like, well, that's okay because Energon Universe is good. Well, yeah, it might be the best damn thing on the shelf in years, but that's not enough to save it. It's like, I don't know what else to tell you. It's going to displace a lot of people. I don't think comics are going to die. I don't think the art form is going to die, but it's definitely going to change. And it might be at the end of it, we just have, maybe 4 or 5 comic book publishers. Maybe Marvel and or DC will decide at some point to license their stuff out because it doesn't make sense to publish it anymore. It is going to radically change the comic book industry. I mean, it's just, and quality does not correlate with the state of the industry necessarily. We got to this point, I believe, because the quality of the merchandise had been in decline, and there was a lot of issues with creators telling fans to go take a hike, and publishers and it wasn't just that. It wasn't just politics and the creators and whatever. Certainly didn't help, but there were predatory business practices, and it was just kind of the perfect storm. Basically, the fan base had been taken for granted for years, And a lot of them just got tired. They noped out. They used the opportunity to nope out. And the pandemic definitely broke things for a lot of people. And then crowdfunding started to eat into money that would have gone to, comic shops or gone to, and it's just the way it is. It's kind of like home consoles eating into the arcade market. People are like, why don't we have arcades like we used to? I'm like, well, you can go buy a PlayStation, you can go buy a Nintendo Switch, play stuff at home. And back in the day, it used to be that the arcade games were vastly superior to what you're playing on your Atari or your NES. And then eventually it got to the place where it's like, no, this is literally the same game that's in the arcade. So why would I travel to the arcade and pay $1 or $2? That's what it costs, to play the same game. I can just buy it for like, 40, $50 and own it and play as much as I want to. And we're kind of in the same position, I think, with crowdfunding. Like, why would I go to the comic book shop and go out of my way to go to the comic book shop and have to deal with all that, if you can find any, because a lot of them have gone out. But why would I do that when I can just order the stuff from Amazon or order the stuff from, Kickstarter or whatever. And that's the new reality, right? So it's going to be bad for shops. Comics will go on, but it's going to be bad for shops. It's going to be bad for small press. So let's talk about this. And I know I took the long way around, but there's a lot of discussion just because you call attention to the fact that things are not in a good place right now. It doesn't mean that you want them to be in a bad place. It also doesn't mean that the quality of the merchandise is bad. Those two things don't always go hand in hand. There's just a lot of issues. It's a perfect storm. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Check out news.clownfishtv.com. Let's talk about Dynamite first. Dynamite's kind of a weird thing. I don't know anybody at Dynamite. We do very few comic reviews on the channel, and part of the reason we don't, well, besides the fact that nobody cares, but we don't do a lot of comic book reviews because we know a lot of those people. And it's kind of weird when you publish your own stuff to also criticize other people's stuff, right? So that's kind of how we felt about, like, we're not making movies, we're not making video games. We can poke fun at the movies and the video games, and we can poke fun at the state of the comic book industry, but we're not reviewing individual issues. The only thing we've ever reviewed in depth on this channel was the very ill-conceived Rainbow Bright reboot from Dynamite, which was vastly different from the cartoon, and Geeky is a huge Rainbow Bright fan. So it was like, we get this thing and we're like, Rainbow Bright's like Sailor Moon and she's like hanging out with aliens. It's like, what the hell is this? This is nothing like the show. So I thought that was very ill-conceived, for sure. And, I think they're kind of a mixed bag. I know people said that the Captain Planet is weirdly political, but I'm like, Captain Planet always was weirdly political. It was like, it was like Captain Planet versus the polluters. It always felt like Captain Planet was something they'd haul you in the cafeteria to watch at school. But so they're a mixed bag. Some of the stuff though is actually pretty good from Dynamite. But yeah, they're owed $500,000 from Diamond. Now they are a bigger publisher. They're not a huge publisher, but they're definitely, I think, in the top 5. So they can absorb. It must be nice. They can absorb a $500,000 debt or loss, I guess, better than a lot of other people. I know they've been doing a lot of crowdfunding lately. They've been crowdfunding different books, but other publishers aren't going to be as lucky. There are some publishers I've seen they're like, hey, yeah, we didn't get our $5,000 or $10,000 from Diamond, and that's going to put us out of business. I mean, those are the margins we're talking about in this industry, right? And that's what I'm saying. Things are going to look very different on the other side. So this is coming from Comics Beat. We'll do Comics Beat. We'll do Bling Cool. I've noticed that a lot. Look, I'm going to be honest. Since shit's gotten real in the comic book industry, I've noticed that most of the comic book sites that are left, with the 2 or 3 that are left, they're pivoting away from straight up politics, and they're not really spending a lot of time bitching about YouTubers like they were. I think they know it's like, oh yeah, okay, we're kind of do or die mode now, right? So we got just to like cover the news. We can't cover for the industry anymore. The house is burning down. Holy shit. And it's actually improved a bit. The journalism's improved a bit. It actually feels like a throwback to like 10 years ago, right? Which is probably a good thing. But anyway, yeah, $500,000. Graphic Policy had it. So Graphic Policy's kind of getting with the program too. I mean, again, a couple of years ago, they would have been like, oh no, guys, this is fine. It's all fine. Actually, no, what would have happened a couple of years ago, they would have pointed out that the guy who owns Diamond was chummy with some of the Comicsgate guys, and that would have been like the whole focus of the article. I don't think they mention it in this at all. I think they're just like, yeah, it's things are bad. They said they reported a filing that hasn't hit the main docket page yet. Dynamite Entertainment, the last remaining Diamond exclusive publisher. Apparently, they didn't find another publisher to jump to. I have friends at other companies that have told me that everybody else is getting out, or they got out before the bankruptcy. They're like, they saw the writing on the wall. They're like, yeah, let's get out. They said they filed a motion asking that they be paid for the $509,000 worth of products they've shipped in a month. So that's a $500,000 in a month. So yeah, they're a pretty sizable operation. From April 27th to that's half a month. April 27th through May 11th. They're also asking for attorney's fees, interest, and late fees. Dynamite is the last major publisher without a new distribution partner. CEO Nick Barucci did comment in a story on Publishers Weekly. He said, we've had conversations with each of the major distributors and we'll be speaking with the new owners of Diamond as we are evaluating our options as the new chapter of the comic book industry begins. This is coming from one of the top 5 publishers. He's saying this is a new chapter for the comic book industry. I mean, it seems pretty cut and dry to me, right? This everything changes. Everything changes. And I don't know if it's going to be good for a lot of people. Marvel and DC will be fine. Everybody else, I think there's a huge question mark there. Luckily, we are well positioned to work with the multiple options of distribution in the industry. Considering the size of our company, we are fortunate that we did not have to make an immediate decision on where to have our books distributed. So I'm sure the $500,000 hurts. I mean, again, we're not dealing with Hollywood here. We're dealing with comic books. So, that's a $500,000. That's a lot of money, right? It would appear that getting paid for the books is a priority. However, all that money and inventory is now tied up in bankruptcy proceedings. New Diamond owners Ad Populum finally sent out a statement to publishers yesterday that made it clear they're only responsible for sales after May 15th. Okay, so anything earlier is the responsibility of the bankruptcy proceedings, and as they note, no payment timeline has been provided to us at this time. Again, this is how bankruptcy works. It's you get in line and they basically pay as they can in the order that the judge, the court, deems necessary. And they owe like Penguin Random House like $1 million. I mean, they owe sizable amounts of money. So I'm like, what the hell were you doing? You weren't paying your bills. What the hell were you doing with that money? So yeah, in better news, Graphic Policy says Diamond only owes Chase Bank, a debtor in possession of the financing, $5.8 million, only $5.8 million. That's a lot less than the 41 they borrowed from Chase. Okay. So it's not terrible, I guess. Yeah. So I think everybody, at some point is going to have to take a good hard look at their business model and be like, what is going to work going forward? And we actually dodged a bullet because, we were talking about, maybe setting up with Diamond at some point and distributing our stuff through Diamond. And then the whole thing went poof. So it's like, yeah, that's good thing we didn't go there. And I know other publishers that are owed a lot of money. But what's interesting, though, is this article is a very different tone for Brian Hibbs, who owns multiple comic book shops, including I think he owns Nerdrotics, Gary's old shop in San Francisco. But he said, yeah, what's hard about this is there's no way now to really know how many comic books are being sold because everybody just kind of went by Diamond for the longest time. And now we have no idea. He said, I think the biggest challenge in the next 6 months to a year for individual operators of direct market specialty stores are mostly going to revolve around what happens with previews, monthly catalog listings, everything that comic retailers can order for customers. How are we able to not only import data to the standards we require to be able to do our job in the 21st century, but then exactly how these things get communicated down to our customers, most of whom aren't willing or interested in trying to sort through scores of data in order to figure out what comics they want to buy. I don't know if it's going to be, I mean, seriously, it might just be like, just, hey, customer, start an account with whatever and order your stuff, whatever online, and then pick it up at the Dropbox or whatever. And at that point, why do you even need a comic shop, right? It might just be like, just order our stuff on Amazon. Call it a day. Order it on Amazon. We'll ship it to you. Fundamentally, the overwhelming majority of my customers' sole interaction with comics is what they encounter when they open the doors of my store, and they're not interested in adding any additional levels of hoops to participate. So how are you going to know what to buy? And he's just like, the data is just not there. And they don't have the data anymore from, I think was it Nielsen? It was a book scan. I think that they were getting data for Comics Beat, and that was actually one of his biggest articles he did was talking about data for the stores, and they're not getting that anymore because the contact they had apparently moved on to another position, or they said, hey, you can't give these freeload and comic book sites, you can't give them our valuable data anymore, and they shut that off. So now we don't have any idea of really what the graphic novels are selling either. Like, nobody knows what's selling. I mean, you pretty much have to go by the Amazon bestseller list, and that can be gamed easily. So this is the thing, though. Since Diamond has gone poof, they said in comics retail, we have ways to ingest data. They said, yeah, Diamond and the website, whatever. And it went poof. He's literally said it went poof. Almost certainly all the stuff is going to go poof, as well as the funnel, how to funnel that data out to consumers. Centralized systems like Diamond's Previews World did so much of the heavy lifting for all publishers. Yeah, everything is broken now. Everything has changed. Everybody relied too heavily on Diamond, and this is what happens. One critical point of failure. That's all it took. The grid, I guess, of the comic book industry. He said, I'm not very convinced that many of my peers are particularly sure of how to get products outside of Diamond. In fact, I'd say the most common question I've read in private retailer boards over the last year has been some variation of, hey, how do I order Viz Comics without Diamond? And I very much do not think that publishers and distributors most impacted by Diamond's bankruptcy are even slightly ready for the challenges of getting that data flowing to places it needs to be flowing to. It's going to be hard. I mean, and we've talked about before, we don't really broadcast it too much because I don't want, people getting harassed or our people getting harassed or anything, but we actually do own a retail location. We do not carry new floppy comics. We do carry some graphic novels, and we do have to order from multiple places. We actually don't have a Diamond account. I never bothered setting one up. But it can be a challenge, right? Especially if you're moving a lot of merchandise, especially if the shops, and I know so many shops are like, Diamond's it. And then they were complaining they had to order from Diamond and Lunar. If they wanted to get in some shops, they kind of dropped off because of Lunar. Then I was like, oh my God, now it's Diamond, Lunar, and Penguin. And, but that's kind of what every other retailer has to deal with. I just don't know if shops are equipped for it. I think it's going to put shops out. I think it's going to put a lot of shops out. I think it's going to put a lot of smaller publishers out. Look, make no mistake, things are not good. It's not good right now. But hey, Energon's pretty good to read. Yes, there is that. So I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.